This is Chief's story. As I sit and reflect on the story I just experienced, I'm reminded of just how much this hero means to me and so many others. After a heartfelt, Chief-focused narrative in Halo 4, 343 Industries took a different narrative direction in Halo 5 Guardians. I think it's fair to say that the overall consensus was one of disappointment, particularly with the fact that the Master Chief features so little in it. With Halo Infinite then, 343 Industries understood it needed to be Chief's story wholly and promised fans exactly that. So the obvious question is, did they deliver on their promise? Taking place after the events of Halo 5 and Halo Wars 2, Halo Infinite opens with introductions that will feel familiar. After losing the war with the Banished, the UNSC is left decimated and in a state of disarray, and our hero, Master Chief, is left adrift in space. A simple, surviving pilot, desperately trying to get home to his wife and daughter, then discovers Chief and rescues him. Once becoming fully functional again thanks to said pilot, Chief gathers basic intel and begins the hunt for a new AI simply named the Weapon. These first couple of missions act not only as an introduction to the gameplay, but provide some backstory as to what happened to the UNSC, why the Banished are on Zeta Halo Ring, and their ruthless leader, Escharum. Immediately, Halo fans will feel at home as from the outset, Infinite feels like an homage to past games in the best possible ways. Movement and animations are extremely fluid, allowing you to intuitively traverse the environment. The gunplay, as I'll touch on more deeply in the multiplayer section, is very likely the best I've ever encountered in a shooter. This makes engaging your first enemies akin to putting on a pair of your favourite slippers as you nail your first headshot on a grunt or knock the shield out of a jackal's hand. The initial enemy encounters are filled with nostalgia as you battle Covenant and Brutes, not seen in a Halo game since Halo Reach, which will strike a chord with veterans. Enemies feel more alive than ever as well, with excellent animations and a much larger range of dialogue than in past games. Nearly every type of enemy seems to be vocal, and of course grunts chatter near endlessly with hilarious quips. Upon recovering the weapon, you get the immediate sense that this will evolve into a meaningful relationship. Even with pieces of the story missing at the start, she is endearing and charming, echoing in ways your first interactions with Cortana in Halo CE. With a wealth of mystery to uncover and intriguing new companions, Halo Infinite wastes no time investing the player in the great journey to come.
This place is exactly what you'd expect.
What does it do?
Unknown. Find me somewhere to plug in and I'll try to find out.
As the first Halo game with an open world environment, walking out onto the surface of Zeta Halo for the first time is rather striking. The running themes of nostalgia and homages struck again as I was met with senses of wonder and curiosity, again akin to first experiencing Halo Combat Evolved. The world itself is beautiful, with sprawling landscapes littered with remnants of the war between the UNSC and Banished. A day and night cycle further complements the beauty, with excellent lighting and an array of effects on a 60-minute cycle. Being that you are on a broken ring floating in space, it's also a rather unique effect that objects, enemies and players can be knocked right off of the ring and into the endless beyond. It's a small effect, but further adds to the setting. If I have one complaint, it's that I would have liked to have seen more diversity in the biomes, as save for some mountains, lakes and the structures themselves, much of the ring looks rather similar. While 343i has mentioned adding weather systems in the future, there are none at this point in time. While Halo Infinite presents players with more choice and freedom than ever before, it maintains its focus on being a Halo game. This was a large concern for me going into the game, so I was relieved to see the world wasn't filled with side missions or meaningless fodder. Instead, there are a few core objective types. Forward operating bases, FOBs in-game, are small installations you can take back from the Banished, which will then act as fast travel locations and armories. As you take back more of Zeta Halo, you'll earn Valor, which unlocks more extensive weaponry and vehicles at your disposal at each FOB. These bases are indispensable on high difficulties where you want to be well prepared before engaging some of the larger enemy groups. There are 15 high value targets spread throughout the map that are unique, named enemies who also carry unique weapons. Should you take them and their accompaniment down, you unlock that weapon for future use at your FOBs. These are fun, varied encounters and very worthwhile given the more powerful weapon variants you can unlock. I highly recommend the AAA skewer, take my word for it. The largest installation on the map are banished strongholds. These are larger complexes with a wealth of enemies, more challenging combat scenarios and a specific objective for you to accomplish. These provided some of the most fun battles in the game as you are free to engage in any way you see fit. From using different vehicles and weaponry to approaching from all sorts of different angles, these are large sandbox battles which illustrate the beauty of Halo combat. They also provide a large amount of valor, thus providing the player with greater resources at their FOBs. The remaining items spread around the map are simply distress calls from UNSC Marines, Spartan cores to upgrade your equipment, small items like skulls and cosmetics, and of course some Easter eggs. It's a focused, purposeful open world design, and Halo Infinite is better off for it. It's also worth noting that you are in no way required to tackle the bases or high value targets. There are no arbitrary requirements to meet to advance the campaign, thus if you're simply looking to push through the narrative and experience the main story, you are free to do so. Using Spartan cores to upgrade Master Chief is new to Halo Infinite and will be familiar to anyone who's been enjoying the multiplayer suite. While you'll likely use the grappling hook more than anything else, you can also unlock and upgrade the drop shield, pulse sensor and thruster along with a passive upgrade to your shield core. Given the wider range of enemy encounters you face, these can come in very handy in certain situations. The final upgrade to the grappling hook allows you to slingshot melee enemies while stunning all others in close vicinity. It's easily one of my favourite attacks in the game. Ah yes, the story. Without steering into hyperbole, the tale that 343i chose to tell in Halo Infinite was going to make or break the game, and perhaps their reputation as the curators of Halo. It was not only exceedingly important that Halo Infinite contained an excellent narrative, but 343 Industries also had the almost impossible task of developing a campaign that met expectations of longtime Halo lore nuts and brand new players in parallel. By my account, they accomplished it and then some, and it begins with the Master Chief. In many ways, Master Chief is the embodiment of hope. He represents the purest form of good, focusing on the mission no matter the cost and no matter the opposition. In Halo 4, Chief was humanized and thus to some degree vulnerable. This created a much more personal relationship with Chief for players and in doing so, deepened the connection with the character. But it's a very fine line to walk with such a stoic character. With Halo Infinite, 343i demonstrated their mastery again, which takes that connection to a new level. The exploration of his psyche is once again on display, creating a personal connection between the player and the 1,000-pound Mjolnir armor they become through their controller. He is entirely the focal point of the player's journey, with a large emphasis on highlighting him through stunning cinematics, relationship building, and an expanded performance by the one and only Steve Downes.
The Harbinger?
She's here.
Good. Let's go say hello.
The weapon plays the largest accompanying role, and by the end becomes one of the most memorable characters in the Halo universe. She is quite frankly brilliant. She leads many of the story elements with an almost indescribable charm thanks to memorable writing and a spectacular vocal performance by the legendary Jen Taylor.
As expected, Arthok was no match for you. Well, as I expected anyway. I bet he was surprised. Arthok wreaked havoc on UNSC colonies for years. No doubt about it, he got what he deserved.
There's an arc to the relationship development between her and Chief over the course of Infinite. It's a masterwork in character narrative and contains some of my favourite moments in any Halo game to date. The pilot, whose name is revealed late in the game and thus I won't spoil, also plays a large role over the course of the game. There are themes intertwined in Infinite that take the idea of Master Chief to a deeper level, and to a degree, the pilot represents one of those threads. He is not a soldier and he can't combat the banished. He simply wants to find a way to return to his family. In ways, he is exactly what Chief was constructed to protect. In that vein, he grounds Chief and challenges Chief's mental programming. This too is aided by an excellent performance by Nicholas Roy. Chief's journey to battle the Banished and uncover the secrets of Zeta Halo is a finely crafted experience and one that will feel right at home to Halo veterans. At its core, Halo Infinite still contains a linear campaign with large set-piece battles and explosive cinematics. It captures the essence of the best Halo campaigns not only with its level design, but also with the sense of mysticism weaved into the world around the player. Over the course of the campaign, you'll navigate through many Forerunner installations and Banished strongholds. Each of these is intimately crafted with some of the best gameplay elements of any Halo game. I want to particularly call out the Forerunner architecture and design throughout Infinite, as it is astonishing. Besides being shockingly beautiful, it captures the essence of the Forerunners more completely than any prior game and adds to the aura of mysticism I mentioned earlier. Given the timeline of events in the universe, there are some deeply embedded lore elements within the game, and Infinite walks a fine line of keeping players engaged, even if they don't have background knowledge of every detail. I thoroughly enjoyed the journey from beginning to end, and as I've taken the time to further consume the narrative, I've come to appreciate it even further. Though, as with nearly all of the mainline Halo games, I can see some players being confused about the finer details. To further expand on the story elements, audio logs are spread throughout the world for the player to uncover. There are logs relating to the UNSC and Banished perspectives, along with Spartan-specific logs. As with the rest of the game, these are well scripted and cover a lot of backstory elements that Infinite can't cover in the main gameplay. Needless to say, if you're a fan of the story elements, hunting all of these down should be a top priority, and you'll be happy to hear the voices of some important figures that didn't make it into the core gameplay.
Have faced many challenges and overcome them all. The yoke of the Covenant, the resistance of humanity. Our warriors grow restless.
At the heart of your battle is Escharum, the leader of the Banished. He is an imposing, intimidating, and prominent figure throughout. He taunts and tests Chief wherever possible, and cutscenes with Escharum keep the player up to speed on what he's experiencing from the Banished perspective through the course of the game. He's easily one of the best antagonists in a Halo game yet, and his arc culminates with more meaning to the player than I was anticipating. Alongside Escharum is the Blade Master Jaeger Redomni, otherwise known as the Spartan Killer. Jaeger is yet another high-level adversary who played a prominent role in Halo canon leading up to Halo Infinite. In-game, he represents Escharum's right-hand man and has silently been killing other Spartans on Zeta Halo. The Harbinger, the mysterious being introduced in recent campaign trailers, also plays a notable role and one that impacts future Halo games. But let's leave that shrouded in mystery for you to discover, shall we? They are not the only major foes you'll face, however, as Halo Infinite contains several boss battles, with each testing you in different ways. Each one has you facing off against a unique, named enemy in a boss arena, and each can be exceedingly challenging, particularly on the higher difficulties. I really enjoyed these battles as I felt they added more depth and variety to the campaign while providing more personality to the larger adversaries. All of this action takes place in an absolutely stunning world, with the highest quality presentation that's ever been in a Halo game. I've mentioned the cinematics multiple times now, and for good reason. They are staggeringly impressive. Cutscenes are almost entirely real time and typically a single camera shot that leads directly into gameplay. They represent the top tier level of quality that should be expected out of a franchise as large as Halo, and in that vein, they don't disappoint. I played on the Series X and fidelity in all aspects was exceedingly high. The game offers a choice of quality and performance modes, and while I typically play on performance mode in every game and do so in multiplayer for the 120 FPS, in campaign I found that quality mode is excellent. It not only significantly increases texture resolution and reduces pop-in, but I believe still aims for 60 FPS and is therefore very smooth for the most part. It's impossible to discuss Halo without mentioning the soundtrack, as Halo music sits atop the highest pedestals in gaming. Halo Infinite's soundtrack, composed by Gareth Coker, Curtis Schweitzer and Joel Korelitz, immediately escalates itself alongside its peers as it pays homage to classic tracks and captures the essence of Halo campaigns beautifully. It's also well implemented, with various tracks accompanying you when simply exploring, and others that are timed to perfectly capture impactful moments. At times, the combination of an important scene and a few simple classic Halo notes was enough to floor me. Thankfully, the production quality of the soundtrack holds true to the overall sound design as well. We already knew the weaponry sounded incredible thanks to the multiplayer suite, and I can confirm that the campaign is even more impressive. 3D sound is supported, and I highly recommend it given some of the elements that are introduced. With the vocals, reflective sound, and open world elements, the 3D sound is impressive and will make full use of a quality surround sound setup or headset. Halo Infinite's campaign is phenomenal. The running joke in the Halo community is that the worst Halo game is always the last one. This is due to the fact that they are often only appreciated in hindsight, with Halo 2 and Halo Reach being prime examples. With Halo Infinite, I'm going to be the killjoy to this trend before it repeats and say definitively, Halo Infinite is the best Halo campaign. When all factors are taken into account and the nostalgia goggles are removed, Halo Infinite has the broadest gameplay, a well-paced, well-written narrative, several moving moments, excellent new additions to the formula, a fantastic antagonist, and a stunning presentation. It is the best of both old and new Halo, and knowing it is only the beginning of what's to come for Infinite has a Halo diehard like me invigorated. While I have a few qualms that I'll cover in more detail when it won't spoil it for anyone else, in the grand scope of what was achieved, they are minor. 343 Industries had a monumental task in front of them. While they will never be able to please all of the fans of a franchise as big as Halo, they should be very proud of what they've accomplished with Infinite. As a spiritual reboot that remains the current Halo timeline, it's everything I had hoped for and more. It's a campaign and story that sat with me for days after finishing it, and I'm already excited to experience it again. So with that, I'm going back in. I have a job to do. Oh, and one last note, do not skip the ending credits.